Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, we'll do the two together. Okay. So today we are going to start our relationship unit. And so a couple of you may or may not have heard, yes, we'll do the stress management and the relationship unit. We'll do both of those as a test together because there was information, but not a ton. And that one went pretty fast. This one's going to take us a little bit longer because we kind of break down each of these units. So today we're going to look at self-esteem and values. And people are like, well, why does that matter if we're talking about relationships? You have to form your own relationships with yourself before you can form relationships with others. If you don't like who you are as a person, it's hard to really connect with someone else. So we start at the very basics, looking at our self-esteem. Measures how much you value, respect, and feel confident about who you are as a person. High self-esteem carries across when all of your emotional needs are being met. So it comes down to the basic foundations when we're trying to build up someone's self-esteem. So the first thing to look at is identity, kind of figuring out who you are as a person. This is why high schoolers struggle with self-esteem. You haven't figured out who you are yet. You're on a little roller coaster of some days you like yourself and you get who you are, and then the next day you don't because you just haven't figured out the true sense of who you are. And that's not going to happen for a couple more years. You're kind of starting to work through that and kind of figure out who you are as a person. Then we have the security, having all of your physical needs met. You know, if you woke up this morning not knowing where breakfast was coming from, what clothes you were going to have to wear, how you were going to get to school, what is happening when you get home tonight, are you going to have food? Like, if you don't have those basic needs, then how can you feel positive about yourself? So it sometimes starts at that peer foundation. And then it's starting to have that acceptance, feeling belonged into a group, feeling like, yep, you have been accepted into whatever group that might be. And so when we're looking at that group, this could be a group of friends. This could be your own family. This could be an overall general class one, or we could look at it as an individual class. Does everyone in this room at some point throughout the semester, it's awkward to do it in the first week and a week and a half, to feel accepted and be belonged within this group? And that's how you start to form and build those relationships and start to feel more confident about yourself. Having a purpose, having something to work towards, to achieve on, helps you kind of build up who that you are as a person. Eventually, I'll tell you the rest of the story, but my senior year in high school, not a very good year. Basically, a majority of my friends, we were no longer friends. But as we got to the end of that senior year, so my senior year was very, very rocky. I hit going into college, and I had a purpose in working towards something. I knew what my degree wanted to be, and I literally put everything I had into that. And so I was able to figure out kind of more about who I was as a person, not based upon my friendships around me. That came basically crashing down. And we still had some rocky times, but eventually, this is something I don't even associate with some of those people anymore, but it's kind of built to who I am now. And then having that self-worth, deserving and knowing that you belong, you deserve love, respect, attention, all of those things. It's trying to just figure out who you are as a person. You deserve these things. If we actually are running a risk of having low self-esteem, people feel very insecure. They often are disrespectful to themselves and to others. They're very vulnerable to peer pressure. We see this one. Most kids that get bullied tend to have low self-esteem. They're an easy target for the others that are compensating and are doing the picking on. So the more you can build up about you as a person, the easier it is for you to stand up against that. They often don't feel very valued with what's happening and going on. Depression sets in. They have a major fear of failure. But this is one I always find funny. I've had kids in my room before that their self-esteem is very low. They're like, I'm never going to be able to do that anyways. It's like a project. I'm never going to be able to do that. And I said, well, have you tried? Well, no. So they will actually choose to not do something which actually causes failure, and you get an F in the grade book versus even attempting. And sometimes just attempting can start to build up all those little pieces. The overuse of drugs and alcohol will definitely start to happen when that self-esteem becomes low. They start to, just as much as they can, avoid. We often see more with girls than boys. They tend to be very promiscuous with who they are. Basically, they try to fill the void of personal self-love with outside physical self-love. Multiple boyfriends, sleeping around, trying to fill something inside, but it's actually all outside, so it's not going to be very helpful. So how can we start to build that self-esteem? We really want to work on our own self-acceptance, that positive self-talk that we talked about the other day. Telling yourself you believe in yourself, you can do it. You might have to have pictures and surround yourself with quotes and things to remind you from the outside world, not just from the inside. Remember to forgive yourself. And when you're learning to take criticism, that's hard. When you're learning and someone is teaching you that, hey, you're doing this wrong, that has nothing to do with you as a person. They don't like you as a person. It has to do with the physical thing that's happening and doing wrong. So I've worked with this one, like with my daughter, when she goes to dance class, and she can go to a 2-hour dance class and be told 20 times something that she's doing wrong. It can easily come out and being like, well, they don't like me. They hate me. I'm doing everything wrong. Well, no, the physical thing you were doing is wrong, not you as a person. And understand coaches and teachers are going to correct you so you eventually can do it the right way. But it's learning how to take that in and not take it and be offended by it. It's hard. Even as adults, sometimes I make mistakes, and you just have to learn to go with the flow. My first year teaching, my very first test I gave, I had a major spelling error. It was supposed to be as. Had an extra S. Oops. And like the whole class starts giggling as they all are, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I'm terrified. I'm like, what just happened? I go over to kid. I'm like, what? And they like point at it. And I'm like, oops, sorry. Yep. It was, there didn't come across on spelling error because it is a word. Okay. But we have to just learn that, okay, I made the mistake. I have to move on. I can't dwell on it. Acting with integrity. So doing what you know is right. So I always say that if I am a person of integrity, what I speak is what I'm actually going to do as well. So if I stood in front of you today and I said drinking and driving is horrible, and then this weekend I go and get a DUI, I come back to class, where's that level of integrity that I have standing in front of you? Not very low, right? It's pretty low. Are you going to believe me anything else I have to say the rest of the semester? No. Now, yes, can we make mistakes as humans and move past them? Absolutely, we can. But sometimes they're just kind of that basic, that foundation we really have to continue to work on. And learning new skills, always important. I'm always learning something new. Reach out to others. Find those that can be supportive. Sometimes your support group of your current friends are really crappy. Get new ones. It's okay to get new. And some of you are like, it's scary. I understand that. But sometimes not all people are meant to be friends with everyone. We have different personalities. We have different likes and dislikes. And so find a group that can be supportive to how you need them to be supportive to you. Figure out how to be positive as much as we possibly can and learn to be assertive. I've learned to be assertive over the years of just standing up for myself. So when I'm assertive, I'm not mad and I'm not mean about it. I'm just very direct and to the point. And I'm not going to stand there and have an argument with someone. I'm going to say my point of view and I'm going to turn around and walk away. And that's what it means. You have to learn to just stand up for yourself. We'll come back to this one again. Okay, we're going to watch this little video on Nick. Will you hit those two lights? Nick has a very unique life. His video here is called The Attitude. Attitude is Altitude.
I wasn't ready.
Oh, wrong one.
thinking, I have no arms and no legs, but I'm very thankful that I have my little chicken drumstick here. People freak out when they see me for the first time. It's so cool. I was on a slide all by myself. Everyone obviously at the bottom of the slide is looking up and waiting for other people to come down. And you're right up there freaking out. They're like, like this. And I was so tempted to look at myself and go, what happened? There were times where I sort of looked at my life and thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. And you keep on concentrating on the things that you wish you had or the things that you wish you didn't have. And you sort of forget what you do have. And there's no point, I believe, in my life where I wish I had arms, legs, I wish I had arms, legs, I wish I had arms, legs, I wish I could help it. What I've seen in life are just a couple of key principles. And the first thing that I've seen is to be thankful. It's hard to be thankful, man. I tell you, when I was 8 years old, I sort of summed up my life and thought, I'm never going to get married. I'm not going to have a job. I'm not going to have a life of purpose. What kind of a husband am I going to be if I can't even hold my wife's hand? It's a lie to think that you're not good enough. It's a lie to think that you're not worth anything. It's freezing, I can't put my hand. I love life. So many people come and say, how come you smile so much? And I'm like, well, it's a long story. But it's very simple at the same time. You see, it's very hard to smile sometimes in life. There are things that happen that you don't know and you don't understand, and you don't know if you're going to get through it. You go through your storms in life, and you don't know how long this storm's going to be. And today I want to share with you some principles that I've learned in my life that you can use in yours. Being patient is beautiful. I tell you, it's the hardest thing. But I realized I may not have hands to hold my wife's hand, but when the time comes, I'll be able to hold her heart. I don't need hands to hold her heart. It is scary to know how many girls have eating disorders. It is scary to know how many people are just angry at life because of their situation at home and angry at others. It's scary to know how many people actually feel like they're worth nothing. Every single girl right here, right now, I want you to know that you are beautiful. You are gorgeous just the way you are. And you boys, you're the man.
So Nick has a very unique life, doesn't he? Imagine being born like that and not being able to do most common activities throughout the day and relying upon someone else to help you along the way. But yet Nick has found a way to be positive about just his thoughts and his feelings about who he is as a person and how he can continue to move forward. So Nick is a worldwide speaker where you see him hugging some of the kids. Early on, this was something he would do if he went into a school. He would actually hug every single kid as they left, and making sure that they understood that they are all equally important, no matter who they are or whatever the things that are happening and going on around them. Eventually, Nick started speaking in much larger facilities and locations. But early on, when he decided to start moving out of his mom and dad's house, he had a personal assistant, a guy who was basically his best friend that he paid to have to help take care of him every day. Get him dressed, brush his teeth, feed him, everything. He doesn't have a hand to pick up a spoon or a fork or to be able to eat anything with. And so Nick eventually meets his wife and he gets married and they have a little kid. I believe it was a girl. I can't remember exactly. Had a kid. And so basically Nick's wife would do whatever for him in the morning. And then when it was time for her to get ready to go to work, then his personal assistant would come in, help him with all of his speeches and those kind of things, but also do the physical things throughout the day. And then when she would get back home, then his assistant would leave. And so Nick and his wife were eventually talking about possibly having another kid. And he just said, I can't continue to rely upon others and expect my wife to have another kid and have to raise another kid without me needing all of this help. And so what their typical night, so when they had the one kid, if they were going to ready to eat supper, she would start off with 3 plates. It started off. And so she would pick up the spoon and feed the toddler and then feed herself and then feed him a bite of food. And eventually she just said, it's just as simple to have 1 plate of food. So she had 1 plate of food and she literally would have to feed everyone in the house. And Nick just said, I have to learn to do some things for myself. So he went in the bathroom was the unique one I always kind of thought. So he put hooks on the wall so he could grab the shirt with the hooks and eventually finish sliding his body down the wall so he could take off his own shirt. You just easily have those hands to be able to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
This is dirty there. Sorry.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yep. I'll come get it later. And so Nick, then the next thing he figured out to do is they put a suction cup on his toothbrush and stuck it in the shower. So then he would go brush his teeth on the wall. Seems silly, but yet he started to have his own independence and be able to do a little more for himself. And then, yes, they did eventually have another kid. Still needs to have people help him. How many of you were scared when he jumps off into the water? I watch it all the time and I'm like, yikes, just scary, But look at the things that he was doing that some of you still struggle with, probably, right? The next video we'll watch this at the end. We'll finish up the notes and then we'll come back to this one. This was on Adam Bender. And so Adam is actually a young boy who you can see in this picture only has 1 leg. And so we'll actually look at kind of his story when it's talking about building up of that self-esteem. But I want to finish the notes and then we'll come back to that one. So our personal values, really self-esteem and values kind of go hand in hand. So your values, beliefs, and feelings of how important someone or something is to you. So that prioritizing of those things. Your values eventually help you choose right from wrong, help guide you along the way. Early on, your parents formed those values for you. That could be from as simple as living within their household, those values, to going to church. And, eventually you will start to find your own ways and your own things that you find to have more value than others. And as you start to grow and change into your own adulthood, you'll start to create your own values that are a little differently maybe than from your parents. But probably some of those main core ones are still going to be very similar. Influences can come from your family, religious organizations. I always tell kids, and growing up Catholic, very strict, but Catholic religion is not very good in helping of the youth in finding, because it's just very old school, very strict. Still love my church, but yet there are other churches that are doing more, that are helping along the way. And I've told both of my kids, if they want to attend youth group at other churches, that's perfectly fine. As long as you're figuring out a way and connection of things, I think it's always important. You can come back to whatever foundation that might mean later on as you grow. But just finding a way to make those connections. And so the television and media also can change our values, sometimes for the positive, sometimes for the negative of what they're using. And then any of our different groups and our friends can all adapt those. So these are the core values that many of us have, and I've done some assignments where we've ranked these, and you have to, which one is your top value to which one is your least value. And then I'd have you take a quiz and see how it really fit in there. And some kids I got more arguments from those. They're like, no, that's not right. I'm like, well, you might not think it is, but this is really how you're answering your questions. And so instead, we're actually going to do a different activity when we're going to look at our personalities, which really start to encompass our values as well. But when we're looking at these, we have our religion, family, friends, truth, honesty. Recognition is always a crazy one. People are like, oh, recognition is not important to me. But people do want recognitions in certain things. You want to receive the awards. You want people to know you received the awards. I had a couple of former students that their recognition came on every daily assignment. So they would go home, like after today, they would go do the assignment. They would come back to me in the morning and basically would want me to pre-grade the assignment so they could fix all the wrong questions. And I was like, no, either you do it or you don't. Like, I'm not going to sit here and basically pat you on the back every time you answer a question correctly. You're going to get some wrong. And that was a major struggle for a couple of these kids. They really just could not move past that idea that I wouldn't just hand them every correct answer along the way. And so eventually they stopped coming in because they said, unless you really have a question, I'm not going to help you. You can come in here every day you want, but I'm not going to go through and tell you what's right and what's wrong. Independence starts to become more important for my juniors and seniors because you're starting to look at you're going to have to eventually be on your own a little more than you are when you're a freshman. That creativity, education, your work ethics, adventure, knowledge, power, money and wealth is also another one. A lot of people say they don't value money, but yet they need to have all the most important things in life or all the high valued items in life. I know money is not high up on my list because I really couldn't tell you what I make. I get a paycheck. I don't know what it says. I'm just, as long as my bills are paid at the end of the month and I can go do things without having to worry about money, that's all I care about. I don't have to know that I have X amount of dollars and I have to have all of this. As long as my basic needs are met and I want to go buy a pair of shoes and I can go buy a pair of shoes, that's all I care about. Like it doesn't have to be certain ones. And so we've tried, I keep working with this one with my kids, but unfortunately, you guys growing up, it is important sometimes what type of clothing you have on. Name brand versus non-name brand. And look at that. And I know people will be like, well, yeah, if you look at my son, yep, most of his stuff is name brand. Do I ever pay full price? Nope. I'm a value shopper. I like that. But when I read this one, so this last year for at Dynamic, we adopted a family. So we were buying Christmas gifts for a family, and there was a 13-year-old boy who all in his wants. So your needs are like your clothes, your wants are like your fun toys, right? All this 13-year-old boy wanted was name brand socks. Now think about that. My son doesn't own a pair of socks that aren't name brand. And it's just because, well, first of all, he's got massive feet. So like to get the right socks, he got the extra XL socks. And so once again, and he likes and prefers certain ones, but I go back to this boy who was 13. So he was only a year younger than my son. And all this kid just wanted was a pair of Nike socks. And to think about how simple and basic that is, right? I literally read this and I was like a bawling mess at home. And my husband's like, it's okay. And I'm like, but this kid that's all he wanted. And clearly it made him feel something when sitting in the classroom that he didn't have on the same socks as other boys in his class did. I mean, to me, that's hard. And so that's where we just have to really be careful with what we have. And then security, I think most of us value it, but until it's been taken away, you don't understand what you've had when it comes to security. And this is like being safe where you're walking and going and doing things. So then tomorrow we're going to actually work this. You're going to take a quiz and it's going to come up with one of these 16 personalities. So it's broken down into 4 different sections of a type of person. And it kind of really breaks down into This is who you are. These are similar famous people that have this same personality that you have, and kind of jobs and careers and how these all fit together. It's kind of cool, even though everyone's like, when we did the values things, not everyone understood like the changes that were happening, but we do the personalities and it makes this big connection. Okay, grab out your computer. I don't know.